Hello, and welcome to the Week 8 edition of the Survivor Podcast here on The Lines. Matt Brown, Steven Andrews coming to you each and every week, giving you thoughts on all of the options for Survivor. And if you are still with us, you dodged the bullets this past week. And Steven, we don't do a lot of victory laps, but I will say we were going, guys, it's the Seahawks, and you just move on. Like, guys, it's the Seahawks, and you just move on. Every one of these other ones underneath that are at least a little bit vulnerable. We even talked through the Bills in saying they've got a lot of injuries on defense. Josh Allen looks like maybe he is actually injured. There's a little bit of wonkiness going on there. It's a division game, et cetera, and sure enough, they fall as well. And so what we had this past week, Steven, is the big dog didn't fall in Seattle, but pretty much all of the secondary options did. And so with that, you probably lost another 20% of your pool, if not more of your pool, because most pools were in that 60 to 70 range on the Seahawks. And so there were 30% of teams on everybody else. And so again, if you just did what you needed to do last week, you're moving on while 30% of the pool is going home.
So I actually rebought back into a new Survivor pool last week because I thought it was a week that might have carnage. We talked last week about how there just weren't as many huge favorites as we've seen in recent weeks. And it's just a good lesson as well that you never know quite what your specific pool may do, because even though Circa had like 60% of the entries on the Seahawks and other pools may have had more than 50%, my particular pool that had, 1,200 people in it, only 27% took the Seahawks. So 26% had the Bills, they're out. 7% had the Rams, they're out. 5.5% had the 49ers. Another 5% had the Bucks. So sometimes going the chalky route does work out in your favor from time to time, because we can look at all this data from all the different national sites, and you just never know what your collection of people are going to do. And to your point, last week was a week to just not get cute.
Mm-hmm. If we look at this week, a couple more options than we had last week, but it all depends on your team availability and how that is all going to play out. We have the Bills on Thursday night as 8.5-point favorites over the Bucks. We have the Eagles as 6.5-point favorites over the Commanders. You get on a little bit further and you have the Dolphins as 9.5-point favorites over the Patriots. We also get the Cowboys as 6-point favorites over the Rams. Chiefs are 7.5 over the Broncos. The Ravens are 8.5 over the Cardinals. And then we have the Chargers as 8.5 over the Bears, and the Lions 8 over the Raiders. So several options this week when it comes down to it, Steven. So first and foremost, obviously, it is going to be availability in your pool. You're going to have to narrow this down to what you actually can play. And if there's any strategy moving forward in your pool, specifically talking to you Circa people out there, where there are those two mini weeks in the Thanksgiving and the Christmas week. And so you need to take that into account whenever you're choosing teams as well.
So there are 5 teams this week, if you look at moneyline odds, that are minus 400 or shorter to win this week. We didn't see that last week, so there's a lot more chalk. But Matt, I wonder if we start the conversation this week going through these chalky teams, perhaps with the teams that give us the most pause, because there are some injury concerns here that I think we need to highlight, most specifically with Buffalo and Miami to start.
Yeah, Buffalo to me is the first easy one to scratch off, right? I think you're probably buying Buffalo at its worst right now, and so I'm not interested in that. If I've made it to this far in Survivor, I at least want to go in with a team that I feel comfortable with from an injury standpoint, from even I'm not even going to say from how they're playing standpoint, but I will say this is a trend down on Buffalo as opposed to a trend up. And, one of the things we've tried to identify is like, hey, man, let's hit this team on the up, or this team is certainly going to be as good as they're going to be, so we need to go ahead and burn them. I don't think that's the case with Buffalo at all, right? And, again, I don't care what they say, Steven. I watched the game. I'm sure you watched the game. Yeah, throwing the ball, he was fine, but I'm not 100% that Josh Allen isn't somewhat hurt, because they didn't call any of those design quarterback runs they normally call for him. He was a little bit more hesitant to scramble as well, and I think it's because he wanted to limit hits on him, right? I mean, it's like, yeah, he can get through the game if he's not taking big hits, but that's not necessarily what makes Josh Allen, right? I mean, we need Josh Allen to go get us 40 rushing yards in a game because he needs to go pick up those tough first downs and stuff, and So for me, it's an easy sell on Buffalo.
Completely agree. You talked about the concerns with Josh Allen. I'll talk about the concerns with the pass defense, because this is not the top 10 defense that we saw in September. They've had too many injuries, and I don't know who on this defense is going to slow down Chris Godwin and Mike Evans in this game, to be quite frank. It seems like the Baker Mayfield injury was just rest on a short week. That's what Ian Rappaport said, even though the line moved a point. So I don't think Baker Mayfield's going to miss this game. Just too many concerns there. And then those injury concerns I have on defense with Buffalo, I have the same injury concerns on defense with Miami against New England, with their 2 cornerbacks banged up, and also offensive linemen that were missing. And now Jalen Waddle being in and out of the lineup on Sunday Night Football with back concerns. We saw what New England did to Miami early in the season. They held them to 24 points. They had a drive at the end of the game to potentially tie it. This is not a healthy Miami team right now, Matt.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. As we make our way down the board, this is where it gets interesting for me, because a road favorite in a divisional game isn't something that I'm typically jumping up and down about. But if you look at the Eagles, it is the Commanders this week, who I have power ranked as one of the very bottom teams in all of the NFL. And then you'd have to look at the Eagles' schedule. And then it goes Cowboys, Chiefs, Bills, Niners, Cowboys, Seahawks. You are probably not even considering the Eagles again until the Giants, which is way down the line, and you have to make it another month and a half in Survivor, if you're even going to consider them again. And so I'm not jumping up and down to use the Eagles, but depending on where I was from a team availability standpoint, I think that they have to be heavy considerations for people this week, strictly based off the fact that they are a big favorite. They're one of the best teams in the NFL. They're playing a bad team, and you are not going to use them again for, again, what was that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You're not going to use them again for 6 more weeks if you don't use them this week.
Completely agree with you in terms of, future value and where you're going to use them. I do at least have a little bit of concern, though, with the matchup being a road game against Washington. I can't figure out Washington, to be honest with you. Like, every week I feel like I have them pegged, and they do the complete opposite. So I don't know which version of Washington we're going to get any given week, but I do know that they played them tough earlier this year. They pulled the upset against the Eagles last year as well, albeit the Eagles had 4 turnovers in that game. So I still think the Eagles are the best team in the NFC. I have them power rated that way in our staff rankings, and I've been steadfast in that. You have been too. Even before the Dolphins win, we said that. But there's still something a little bit off with the pass defense, and Washington exploited that first time around. So I hear you on the future value point, but tell me you're not at least a little bit concerned about how they've looked against Washington in 2 of the last 3 games they've played against this team.
Yeah, no, it's like I said, I think it just comes down to, from a Survivor aspect, from team availability, because the last few teams we're going to talk about here, I don't know how many teams you're going to have left of them, and then also how comfortable you're going to feel using them. So, for example, you just talked about the Dolphins and how there's at least some injury concerns there. I think if we're talking, who am I more worried about in a divisional matchup, the Dolphins against the Patriots or the Eagles against the Commanders? It would be the Dolphins against the Patriots. So there's an advantage to that one. We get to the Cowboys and the Rams, and it's like Cowboys are only a 6-point favorite. The Rams have enough on offense to kind of scare just about anybody, right? Like with the whole Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua and Stafford and all that. So that gives me at least a minimal amount of pause. Yeah, you can always use the Chiefs, but we talked about that. We talked about this last week. Like, having the Chiefs in your back pocket is basically like your wild card. Like your wild card is that any given week, if something just looks really terrible, you can just play the Chiefs and feel comfortable, and you can just move on, that you're playing the best team in the NFL with the best coaching staff, with the best quarterback, and they're going to be favored, And so that's why I don't go in that direction. And then listen, if we want to talk about warts, tell me all the warts with the Chargers. Tell me all the warts with the Lions. And the only reason I don't mention the Ravens is because we used the Ravens already earlier, like a couple of different times in this season. So like they're, if you had the Ravens available, certainly my number one choice this week, because the Cardinals have kind of proven to be who they are, which is one of the worst teams in the NFL. But It's very unlikely that if you've been playing a full season Survivor, that you still have the Ravens available, because we did have a couple other opportunities to use them. But if you do, that would be my number one team. Steven, I don't know what would be your number one team.
Ravens would be, if you have them available, for me, because if you look at their future schedule as well, after the Cardinals game, it's hard to find a spot where you want to use them. Seattle, Cleveland, Cincinnati, the Chargers, bye week, the Rams, Jacksonville, San Francisco, Miami, Pittsburgh. Like I look at that and I'm pretty much saying I don't want to use them any week the rest of the season other than this Arizona game. So they're at the top of my list if you have them available. Chiefs probably in my top 3, but I agree with you that I'm trying to hold them as long as I possibly can. The team we haven't talked about yet that I think is going to be probably in your top 3 as well is the Detroit Lions on Monday Night Football hosting the Las Vegas Raiders here, and that dumpster fire of a head coach, Josh McDaniels.
Yeah, I mean, it does look like, if you want any pause in this guy, it does look like they're going to have Garoppolo back for this one. I don't think it matters, but like it doesn't look at least like they're not going to have to start Brian Hoyer or Aiden O'Connell. They'll at least have Jimmy Garoppolo back in there. That said, it's a back injury. Who knows? He takes one sack and he's maybe back on the sideline. You know, I mean, it's bad in Vegas right now. The Raiders probably put up, I would guess this week, and this isn't to get too much into talk radio here, but I think it does paint a picture of my view of the Raiders, and I want to see if you agree. But that performance this past week, Brian Hoyer or not, having to switch to Aiden O'Connell or not, or was one of the worst performances in a single game by any team of the entire NFL season so far, because you were getting a Division II quarterback making his first start in the NFL, and you didn't do anything to make him uncomfortable. You made him look like he was a 5-year veteran in the NFL, and then on top of that, you wet the bed on your side as well against one of the worst defenses in the NFL too. I think from a singular game perspective, maybe last week from the Raiders was one of the, if not the worst games of the 7 weeks we've been in the NFL this year.
And just another piece of evidence that this head coach and the coaching staff of the Raiders just doesn't make adjustments. Because, Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure I saw that Bagent, I believe at this point, his ADOT in that game was less than 4. So his average throw down the field was less than 4 yards. How do you not adjust to that at some point and just play press coverage and make it difficult for him? They just never did that. So it's just a dumpster fire from a preparation standpoint, from an in-game adjustment standpoint for the Raiders. They only have 3.9 yards of offense against the Bears defense, who, by the way, the Bears defense over the past 3 weeks is number 3 in the NFL in defensive success rate. So that gives me pause looking at the Chargers this week from a Survivor standpoint, because something's off with the Chargers offense, and we already know their defense isn't very good. So I'm definitely not putting the Chargers in my top 3, despite the fact that they're playing Bagent and the Bears this week.
Yeah, the Jordan Addison had twice as many receiving yards on Monday night than Quentin Johnston has for the season for the Chargers. Like, I mean, it's just something is I don't know what I thought Kellen Moore, maybe they just continue to snow me. I don't know. I thought Kellen Moore was going to come in and have a much better impact on that offense, but he is not, and so I don't know. I don't
think it's unreasonable to say, first of all, the great seasons we saw with Justin Herbert, if you dig into the metrics, a lot of that was buoyed by really strong 3rd and 4th down numbers from an EPA and success rate standpoint. And we know year over year, it's the early down metrics that are more predictive from year to year than the late down metrics. So that's kind of regressed a little bit. And it's not just Justin Herbert, it's other quarterbacks we've seen over the years, Matt, that when you put a new offensive coordinator with a quarterback, it's quite often not until year 2 where they hit their peak, and it takes an adjustment. Then you take Mike Williams out of the mix. Keenan Allen's playing more on the outside where he's getting tougher coverage, and the other receivers aren't producing the way they need to. You know, it's an interesting theory from our director, Brett Colson, who's been very vocal, talking about when Austin Eckler's on the field, it actually makes them less efficient because they want to run the ball more instead of just letting Justin Herbert cook and throw the ball more. So that's an interesting theory as well. Whatever it is, it's not working very well right now, and they're not more than just a slightly above average team in the NFL as opposed to the top 10 ceiling that a lot of us thought they could be.
Yeah, and I do want to circle back to the Chiefs here, guys, because if you're this deep in it, or if you rebought like Steven did in one of these ones that opened up, mid-season or something, the Chiefs, not only are they going to be favored in every game that they play, so that's always a good thing to have in your back pocket, but you got to remember, 2 games against the Raiders left, a game against the Packers left, a game against the Patriots left. These are all games in which they are going to be touchdown or more favorites. And so you will, not only will you have the Chiefs in your back pocket for when you need them, you are going to have them in your back pocket as touchdown or more favorites in these games. And so it's not even like the future value is good. It's great for the Chiefs. And so I cannot advocate using them this week against the Broncos. I just can't get there. And I think if you're playing to win, the strategy is to hold on to the Chiefs. I think the strategy is to not play them this week and know that I have 2 games against the Raiders, a game against the Packers, a game against the Patriots, all still to come for the best team in the NFL.
So we're throwing a lot of teams at you this week, guys. There's a lot of options here. So if you want to try and get a little more organized in your head when you're going into your Survivor entry, go to thelines.com, check out the Survivor post from Mo Nawara. Under the drop-down menu under NFL, you can click Survivor Picks and you'll find it. And our partners at Pool Genius have a really nice organized table there to give you win percentages. You can actually compare teams if you're between a couple and look at what their win probability is, what their future value is going to be, and even look at several other articles from Pool Genius in that post that we have at thelines.com. There's also a link down in the description if you want to get a free 3-day trial to go check out Pool Genius as well for your Survivor picks the rest of the season.
I think that like you said, Steve, like us eliminating the teams is pretty easy. Like I said, I'm eliminating the Chiefs because of future value. I'm eliminating the Bills because it's a short week and I think they're kind of clunky right now, and a bunch of injury news doesn't have me feeling good. I'm eliminating the Dolphins, same deal. Injury stuff, divisional game against, like, hey, look, we have seen the offense not fly high 2 different times this season. And so I think that there's at least a minimal amount of pause, giving the familiarity that the Patriots have with this offense, that it's enough for me to get off of them. And so you get down to some of these other games and we start to talk about it, and it's kind of like, listen, I don't want to play the Cowboys against the Rams. That's only a 6-point favorite with other options that are out there anyway. So that leaves me with 3 real decisions this week, and it's going to be the Eagles, it's going to be the Lions, and it's going to be the Ravens. That's pretty easy for me. It's Ravens number 1, it's Eagles number 2 only because of the future value for me, and then Lions number 3 in because, again, guys, if you didn't pay attention, it is a brutal stretch coming up for this Eagles team after this week. I mean, it is a team that is either going to prove to you that they are the best team in the NFL, or they're going to be looking and going, oh man, we might lose this division to the Cowboys, because after this, it is Cowboys, Chiefs, Bills, Niners, Cowboys, Seahawks. And that is a tough game after tough game after tough game after tough game. And so, you're not going to get them as 6.5, 7-point favorites again for another 6 weeks. And so that's strictly the reason they're number 2 for me.
So we record this on a Tuesday. Just one quick caveat on the Eagles, just to double check. Jalen Hurts did have a minor knee issue that popped up after Sunday Night Football, so just double check the injury report.
Right, yeah,
I think he's fine. I think he's going to play.
As always, double check the injury reports before you plug in your thing. Yes,
absolutely. So I'm with you. Those are my top 3 as well. If you have Baltimore, they're number 1 with a bullet for me. I'm trying to save the Chiefs. I'm with you, so I'm going to leave them off my top 3. So to me, it's Detroit and Philadelphia after that. Agree with you about the Eagles' future availability. Not going to be able to use them again until week 16, most likely. But if you're worried about that matchup, you still can go Detroit. But Detroit has a lot of future value as well. Mm-hmm. Matt, before we wrap, I just want to throw out one crazy contrarian option. It's a side you've already bet this week. And I'm curious if you would ever consider using the Falcons if you have multiple entries, or you want to be totally contrarian with what looks like Malik Willis starting for Tennessee this week.
Yeah, I mean, if you had multiple entries, I think that this is probably the only time you're going to feel comfortable using the Falcons again. So I do think, apparently it's not out of the realm of possibility they start Will Levis either. And like,
that's a wild card.
If you get a quarterback making his first NFL start, you always try to play against that, right? I mean, like, you just always try to go the opposite direction. in that. So yeah, I mean, I don't hate it. I think for sure that if I was going to play, a contrarian play this week, if you kind of look up and down the board of any of the short-ish either favorites or dogs, they're the ones that make the most sense for sure, right? I mean, like you're just not feeling super comfortable about any of these other ones. I mean, the Jets still don't have a good offense. So, I mean, as bad as the Giants have been, the Jets don't have an offense. You're not going to go that direction. The Jags, very tough road game against the Steelers. You're not going there. Texans, the first time they've been laying a field goal in like 4 years or something or whatever. So like you're probably not feeling too comfortable about that. The Panthers are coming out of a bye, and so they did give over play call. Frank Reich did give up play calling duty. So who knows? Maybe the Panthers offense looks a little bit more feisty. So you're not going there. So yeah, I think for sure if you're trying to get wonky, maybe the Seahawks and the Browns if you get news this week that that Deshaun Watson's not going to go again, and they're going to go with PJ Walker or DTR.
Oh, yeah.
Because
if it is PJ Walker, I definitely would consider Seattle this week for sure.
Because again, they are below league level. They are below even replacement level. Like I mean, they're that bad, and so it doesn't even matter how good the defense is. If you can't put any points on the board, it doesn't really matter. But fellas, again, everything that we do here is absolutely free over on thelines.com. And if you want to continue to talk this all the way up until kickoff, whenever you have to put in your picks anyway, upper right-hand corner of thelines.com is our little Discord button. It is absolutely free as well. And so you can get in there and you can discuss not only Survivor, sides and totals, and of course, as NBA season is kicking off, you can talk the NBA. College basketball is right around the corner. And we talk it all over there in the Discord. So be sure and head in over there because that will be a valuable resource as we certainly get into the heat of basketball season. I know it can be tough on a week-to-week basis to try to figure out what all's going on in college and in pro basketball. It's a nightly sport, so who's in, who's out, who's hurt, who's not, what's going on there. You can at least talk to some very smart people over there and keep up with all of that. For Steven, I'm Matt. Good luck on your Week 8 Survivor pick.